We're not your run-of-the-mill podcasters,
No,
right?
we're the mother bleeping Metacast, Bob.
I know. And so what I want to do is rattle folks out there in the Agile community and say, you know what? Maybe your lens is too narrow at times. And maybe it would be good, not just with the alliance. How about how about with your manager? My manager sucks. They don't do anything for me. What are they doing? Right? Well, okay, but if you broaden that lens, maybe they're doing a hell of a job. Entry music. Da, 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 da. It's the Bob and Josh show.
In the Agile space, everybody's talking about this. Bob and I aren't, I wouldn't call ourselves clickbait creators, but I feel obligated. I feel like we have a duty as the creators that we are, having been around for 15 years talking about Agile. I feel like we have to address the PMI Agile Alliance thing. So the good news is, I think what you're going to hear is different than what you'll read or hear anywhere else, because that's us.
That's
us. Right. That's right. So
PMI. So Metacasters, if you've had your head in the sand, which actually some of you may have, because this, I don't know how
had your head in the snow,
or in the snow, or in the rain, or whatever. PMI and the Agile Alliance struck a deal, and it is now, what is it? The PMI Agile Alliance. So they called it a partnership in the announcements. There's a naming convention where you all know when there's a merger, whoever starts first has a subsumption of,
yes,
of the second part. So it's that. And then that created this stir of comments, probably most of them negative.
I would agree.
Yeah, probably most of them snarky and negative and doom, and it's sort of adding on to that doom saying of Agile's dead and coaching's dead. So this just lit another fire under that. I posted something though, and I'll start the Metacast this way. My reaction was sort of sadness or hope, more hopeful that the Agile Alliance, from my point of view, has done a lot of good. So it's not about the conference. People were snarking about, is the conference, I didn't like the conference, or I didn't like the speakers, or over history. They lost a technologist, and it was people. I have one snarky person was like, oh, the conference was taken over by the people, the people that care about people, right?
Heaven
Not
forbid.
not the people that care about writing lines of code. So, and there's truth to that. It has lost some of the technology slant over the years, over the decades, and things like that. But I didn't really care about PMI. I didn't really care about the conference as much. I cared about the good that the Agile Alliance has done. That I don't think any other PMI, Scaled Agile, Scrum Inc., Scrum Org, you name it, IC Agile, really hasn't done. They've done things just a sample. They support around the world meetup groups. In fact, our meetup group here, Agile RTP in the Triangle, the meetup is paid annually by the Agile Alliance, and they do that a lot, and it adds up. People, Agile in Color, which is a diversity and inclusion effort that they've sponsored worldwide, and really done a good job there. Women in Agile is something near and dear to my heart, and they've sponsored that. They've put money behind that. Agile coaching ethics, a study group, and publishing ethics, really having an ethical focus on doing stuff. That's an example of doing stuff that no one else, the good stuff, to me, the good stuff, the investment stuff that no one else is doing. And I worry that will PMI invest in that or not invest in that? And that's my response. And then another genre of response was people were like, well, they didn't do good for me, right? I went to the conference and I was disappointed. So you know what? I don't care about what happens because they didn't bless me. Well, you know what? The Agile Alliance didn't buy these suspenders, Metacasters, and they didn't buy my hat, and they didn't buy my underwear. okay, or they didn't do anything for me. But what they have done is they've done stuff for the community. So what roils my ass a little bit is that people are kind of selfish. They're reacting selfishly. Well, the Agile Alliance, what have they did for me? They've disappointed me. And that's fine. You can look at that lens. But then what I'd like to do, and I think this is a general case where folks lose perspective, look at what they've done globally and appreciate that and be thankful for that and have gratitude for that. And actually, you know what? And get your butt off the line. Like I'm a corporate sponsor of the Agile Alliance. I'm a corporation of one. I just threw money at them to become a corporate sponsor because they do good work. So I have a tendency to put my money where my mouth is. So I think there's a selfishness slant out there, a me slant out there, and I wonder how Josh is going to react to that. He's probably going to slap me around.
No, I just you and I are different consumers in the agile space. We talked about this a little bit before we hit the record button, but both of us create a lot of content. We certainly create here, but we have our own newsletters, and Bob is constantly writing as we know. But Bob is way more engaged in the general agile community than I am. So a couple things. One, the thing that Bob said that may cause concern. I don't know how well PMI operates or executes, or whether they give like Agile Alliance does or not, but they've been around a long time, and they've been able to acquire Agile Alliance, because I was taught there is no such thing as a merger. That might be what it's called publicly, but there is no such thing as a merger. So I have not, I don't have the experience Bob has with Scrum Inc., Scrum Org, Agile Alliance. In my mind, it's all kind of the same. But like I've dabbled in a little bit of both. I don't go to the number of conferences that Bob does, so I don't have a leg to stand on here. But what I want to make sure that people hear is that over the years, you have heard Bob and I talk about the industrial complex of Agile and the challenges and some of the frustrations that we've had around it. It sounds like Agile Alliance is a little bit different, which is why Bob's a little fired up, or as we call it, juicy. Bob's a little juicy about this topic. So if anybody's going to peek up and say like, hey, wait a minute, like let's slow your roll here. Let's not get so angry. There's no one I trust more than Bob saying like, look, these, like, I had no idea that they did all of those things. I just found out about that like 2 minutes ago when Bob said all those things. So in this age, and the reason why I'm very happy Bob went first is make sure you get the facts and all the facts before you establish a strong opinion. So Bob has more facts than many folks will have. So this is a guy to listen to. So maybe rewind it, listen again, and understand what they do and why they do it, and why it's an important organization within the world of Agile.
That's really one of the points, Josh. I think a lot of folks are weighing in from the point of view that they think the Agile Alliance is identical to all these other things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, no, they don't sell certifications. They don't do any certifications whatsoever. So that's not their mantra. They're totally agnostic. They're not Scrum. They're not XP. They're not anything. They don't try to sell a framework. Thank God.
Mm-hmm.
So here's this one agnostic institution. In my mind, yes, they have they've had an annual conference for 20 plus years. Trivia fact, Josh, or piece of trivia: the first conference that that led up to the Agile conference was in 2001, I think 2004, in Raleigh, North Carolina. Here locally, it was the first. It had a different name, but it evolved quickly into the National Agile Conference. So they have they have that conference, but they're not like everyone else. The other thing that I'm ranting about a little bit, and Josh, I'd like you to weigh in. I think there's a general trend here beyond PMI and beyond Agile Alliance. I'm wondering if people have become too selfish. If it's too me, so that's part of the lens here. When, like if I looked at the Agile Alliance as what have they done for Bob Galen, it's very little, other than putting on a conference where I hang out with peeps and I have a really good time. The
Mm-hmm.
agendas are sort of okay, and I've had the opportunity to speak there a bunch of times, but it's not a big thing that they've changed my life. What enamors me is that they've changed other lives. What enamors me is they've provided vehicles for so many other groups of people that normally don't have those avenues. And so it's look at it, but a lot of the comments are me, as opposed to me, but then more broadly. Like, why don't folks know what the Agile Alliance does? Maybe they don't care. Maybe they're too self-centered. And so what I want to do is rattle folks out there in the Agile community and say, you know what? Maybe your lens is too narrow at times. And maybe it would be good, not just with the Alliance. How about in your, how about with your manager? My manager sucks. They don't do anything for me. What are they doing? Right? Well, okay. But if you broaden that lens, maybe they're doing a hell of a job organizationally, and you're just so narrowly focused. Get ready, Josh. I'm ready to shut up. That that you're not seeing the forest for the trees,
Yeah.
and maybe you want to do that. Thoughts, Josh?
Couple thoughts there. First and foremost, as a person that has investigated standing up a conference and delivering a conference, that takes a lot. That is a challenge. So to be able to establish and run one on a regular basis is a real challenge. So I think as I'm learning more about the organization, perhaps the right response is, thank you, PMI. Thank you for saving this thing that has done good and is different than the others and has aspired to be different than the others. And as we know, there's a business in the Agile space. So it's very easy when things get stacked against you to decide we have to change who we are. It's easy, say Bob and I are the founders of an organization. It is easy to say, okay, so Bob, we have stood firm for decades building our company, and we've said we are not going to get into the certification space because that's not who we are, that's not who we want to be. There could be a time where Bob and I look at each other and say, okay, Bob, our company is going to die. So what are our options?
Yep.
We could do the thing we said we were never going to do and become the company we didn't want to be, but we'll be alive. Our company will still be a thing. Sounds like Agile Alliance isn't doing that. They aren't going out and trying to attach on to all the classic revenue generators that are out there. A lot of assumptions here. Who knows what went on behind doors. When this came out, it seemed like everybody was surprised. So obviously there was, okay, we could use some help and we want to keep this thing going, but they clearly made a statement of this is who we are. This is who we aspire to be. Now, whenever an acquisition happens, there's always stuff that changes. It's never perfect. It's never absolutely clean and comfortable. But I assure you, those same people that led that organization that continued for decades, not falling into the traps of all the classic revenue generators that get people a little crunchy about the situation, that they chose not to do that they're going to fight like heck to try and maintain Agile Alliance what it was. But they've got some additional financial backing that now
Absolutely.
enables them to continue to do the things that they've been passionate about, like all of the community work that Bob talked about. So everybody, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and one of the wisest words I've learned from a former executive that I worked with was, every decision was right when they made it. So given Agile Alliance in the situation that they were in, it sounds like it's hard to argue with the fact that they're just trying to do good. They're trying to be a benefit to the general community and space. So based on all the information that they had, based on the situation that they were in, this was the best decision for them to make. And
You know
it
what?
could go horribly wrong. It could go fantastic. But you know what? We'll find out.
You know what happened, Josh? Two of the board members reached out to me. I did this post, which was a balanced post,
Mm-hmm.
and they reached out to me to ask if I had any questions, and I talked to one of them. And they did. I mean, I know both of them in the
Yeah.
community, but I mean, they have day jobs. They didn't
Yeah.
have to reach out to me. One of them we talked for 30 minutes. Uh, I talked about it. They have some of the same. They have some of the same concerns. It was a survival play more than anything. They were surprised about how open PMI was and welcoming. And there was a commitment on the board's part to really try to hold the line on the philosophy or the mission and vision of the alliance. And I appreciated that. But again, I want to come back to assuming, maybe it's another way of saying it is everyone has assumed positive intent is so quickly in the Agile community, we espouse stuff. But then when something happens that surprises us, we go off on the deep end, right? Agile's been very good to us. And then it hits some turmoil, and then it's dead, and we need to throw it away and just put it behind us. Perhaps it's human nature, but that's what I'm sort of saying, assuming positive intent. Maybe this is a checkup for how we're all behaving, how we perceive things. Are we walking our talk a little bit? And many of us don't. I'm
Yeah.
not perfect at it, but many of us don't. Josh.
So agilists can be very opinionated and very my way or the highway.
No.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And there have been numerous times in our hundreds of episodes where Bob and I have talked about you might not be ready for Agile. You might not be suited for Agile. I have had customers, potential customers, and I know Bob has talked about this where we've said, like, Agile's not for you. Like, that's just not you. That doesn't mean they're wrong. That doesn't mean they're bad. That's what's appropriate for the situation that they're in. So, there've been a lot of Agile trying to fight against things that PMI pushes and trying to move away from some of the traditional approaches. But the traditional approaches aren't evil. So PMI is not evil. Would I run an organization the way PMI describes? If I'm calling all the shots, no. But that doesn't mean there aren't organizations where PMI doesn't do a lot of good and isn't prescribing all of the right answers for some of the things that they're doing. So I would not look at this and say, like, oh, PMI, that's the thing we've been fighting against for years. No, we're not fighting against it. We're fighting against some of the challenges that are out there that have been created by some of the habits that people in organizations have adopted and have been unwilling to change. So I don't view it as, oh, well, PMI is going to project manage the Agile Alliance to death. It's not. No,
No.
if that was a thing, they would have just let it die on the vine. They wouldn't have said, you know what, we're going to help out here. We're going to keep this thing alive.
But I think you hit it, Josh. We're a little prickly. We're a little self-centered. It's like I at least understand. I don't know if some agilists, there's some generation of agilists that don't know what a PMP is, and they don't know what the PMBOK is, and they haven't read it. So they've almost created this Darth Vader,
Yeah.
sort of meme for project management, and then they've railed against it. There, project management principles work. Josh, you've used. Have you ever released a project? Have you ever endeavored to release something on time, Josh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Me too. Right? I mean, and how we do it. Have you ever had a milestone that
Mm,
you've tried to drive towards? I use those terms intentionally. Milestone, drive towards. Josh, have you ever done that? Let me
yes.
help you. I've done that. I can't. I'm countless numbers of times I've done it in my language, etc. So they're not. We sort of we're a prickly lot. We like, we align with what we believe in, but we're not very flexible. We don't walk our talk, like assuming positive intent, trying to understand that context matters, like tools applied in a context. Project management tools applied in certain contexts work really well. You don't have to throw everything out. Story points don't work everywhere or whatever. Velocity doesn't necessarily work everywhere, right? And being adaptive. Oh, adaptive. Oh, where have I heard that before? Well, crap, right? And reflective. So yeah, Metacasters, I think this episode is not just a PMI. It's a call to look in the mirror and to really look in the mirror and say, am I a little bit overzealous and over the top a bit? Am I a little bit selfish? Am I a little bit self-centric? Do I need to have a checkup from the neck up? I just wanted to fit that in there,
Wow, man,
Josh.
I'd
And
never expected those words to come out of your mouth in that order, ever, ever, ever.
ever, right? But do I? And I think this might be a wonderful impetus to do that. I'm not calling anyone out. Call yourself out. But I do think, based on this flare, that there's some folks there that really need to look in the mirror. They really need to assess things more broadly. They really need to be more balanced, and they're not.
It is amazing how unagile many agilists are.
Isn't it funny?
Yeah,
Well,
it
it's
is.
not. I mean, we can laugh about it now, but it's
Yeah,
sad.
yeah,
It's the do what I say, not what I do,
yeah.
right?
If you are really living by the agile principles, decade ago, some friends and I were we were trying to define a framework that we were building, and what we came back to was like manifesto driven decision making. So like if you just boil it down to the words of the manifesto, just use that to drive your evaluation of the words and the decisions that you're making. And where a lot of people make a mistake there is that it's something over another, but everybody reads that as something instead of
Yep.
another.
Yep.
So many agilists live in a space where like this is how something that I read or something that I was taught or something that I studied said it should be done. And there are no, you've heard from us a lot of times, there are no silver bullets. And so Bob and I have pooled and shaped the things we teach and preach and implement from many, many, many sources, even some of the things that we may not like how the organization that delivers them runs. Safe, classic example. There's some fantastic pieces of safe that I implement everywhere I go.
A
Does
handful,
yeah,
Metacasters, a pinch.
there's some good pieces there, but not all of it's for everybody. So understand all the things before you launch a tirade. Step one. Step two, evaluate your true agileness, lowercase a. How effective are you at achieving a goal, regardless of how you achieve that goal? What are the decisions you make along the way? What are the things that you shed that aren't working? What are the things you try that might work? Those are the things that are important, and learn from all the different directions. Diversity. We've talked about diversity a lot. This is one of those things where there's a ton of really good ideas out there that have been tried and tested for decades. And as Bob said, they work. And you probably don't know it, but you're probably using some of it and you don't even know where it came from.
Absolutely. So going forward, I'm wishing PMI Agile Alliance well. Uh, I am hopeful of doing good work. I am hopeful that the leaders, the board members are committed. They're committed to it, and that the outcome. There is a conference coming up in July in Denver, and that's still going on. They haven't changed. They haven't changed the name or anything due to the merger. So I'm actually speaking there, but no one paid me to. No one paid me to drive this topic. And I'm looking forward to going out there. I'm looking forward to see what emerges at that conference. But I love where we left this, Metacasters. Is it's really the more general case of, are we walking our talk? Uh, and I want to circle back to your leaders. I think the same thing that I saw in judging PMI and judging the Agile Alliance. I wonder, and this is just a thought that we're going to put out there for you for to reflect. Are you doing some of that same stuff with your leaders? Are you looking at it narrowly? Are you too me oriented? And do you really need to go we? And if you're anything in the Agile, it's not a me space, it's a we space. So with that, a little bit of reflection for everyone. From beautiful downtown Cary, North Carolina.
In beautiful downtown Fuquay Arena, North Carolina.
And Fuquay Arena is gorgeous, everyone. Just gorgeous. I'm Bob Galen.
And I'm Josh Anderson.
Shake
and bake.
Take care, y'all.
All right.